You are listening to Realign Your Life Podcast, where I discuss with you strategies on how to realign your life and move towards the direction you always want to. I am Vivian, the host of this podcast, and every week I will bring value on how to improve and realign your life either through a guest or my thoughts. I can't wait to share what we have this week. It's time to realign your life. Well, hello there, and welcome back to Realign Your Life Podcast. This is Vivian, the host of this show, and I am so excited. And of course, I'm very honored to have you join me for this episode. Well, I am going to share some thoughts with you today in regards to Jesus and the disinherited and how that all relates as we begin to realign our lives. In today's climate of social, political, economic divide, it is important for us to stay focused as we realign our lives and not get caught up in the rhetoric that will take our eyes off of what we know is the truth and the journey to our purpose. We are here to love the Lord with all of our heart, our souls, and our minds, and we are commanded to love each other, and we should meet each other without the weight of status. I've been reading some works that I believe are eye-opening and thought-provoking. One major work, of course, is the Holy Bible. Reading the words of those that God inspired as writers of His Word in the various versions have inspired me once again to dig deeper and to find what I would call maybe a better way to study the people, the places, the context, the history of what was going on in their world. You know, we often think of the Bible and want to twist that Bible into the mindset of a Western culture. But we have to be reminded and remember that the Bible was written to people that lived in a culture that was totally different from ours, a whole different world, a whole different language from ours, from us. Of course, you know, the Bible is not the only historical and literary work that can open and expand our minds. I shared with you in a previous episode the book, The Choice by Dr. Thomas Howard, who talked in that book about the concept of us living inside out. I hope you've listened to that episode and have started putting some of those principles into place. In this episode, I want to share with you some points that I've gleaned from another author, Dr. Howard Thurman, and a few of his thoughts from his book, Jesus and the Disinherited. Dr. Thurman was hailed by Life magazine as one of the greatest preachers in the 20th century. He was known as a mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King, and it is said that Dr. King often took a copy of this book with him through his travels. And of course, he sought inspiration from this work in the days leading up to the Montgomery boycott. I find Dr. Thurman's book very intriguing because it is just as applicable today as it was when it was written in 1949. Yeah, almost 75 years ago. Well, 75 years ago. Wow. He takes us into the life of Jesus and his relationship with those that were disinherited, and setting that example of what our lives should look like today. In my various work roles, I've had the opportunity to work with the disinherited, the marginalized, and those persons that are vulnerable. And in fact, I grew up in that environment also. Grew up in a period of segregation and black and white and black restrooms and white restrooms and white water fountains, black water fountains, segregated schools. So yes, that was a time, and it continues to be a time for many that are disinherited and marginalized. And I'm sure in your life that you know of some people that are in that status now. And as a race, as a people, as a country, let's check ourselves out. Many times I wonder, are we aware of our unconscious biases? And in fact, are we really aware, or do we validate our conscious biases that we may hold? And I see working in an environment of family preservation right now where the goal is to keep children out of foster care. Many of these kids are disinherited, they're marginalized, they're vulnerable people, parents. And so a lot of times the families that may be hosting, or the parents and the children themselves, may come with some unconscious biases. So I ask the question, are we living the life that Jesus exemplified and set that example for us? That's a question that you can ask yourself. And in Dr. Howard's book, he says, when we meet others where they are and thus treat them as if they are where they should be, we emerge into an area where love operates, revealing a universal characteristic unbounded by special or limited circumstances. I really like that, because when you meet a person where they are, no preconceptions there, just a spirit of love and understanding. Hey, you are a man or a woman just like me, and you are an individual that God loves too. So when we think about Jesus and the disinherited, I want to give you maybe 3 things that I have gleaned from Dr. Thurman's book and his pointers on Jesus and who Jesus was and how he dealt and how he was a part of the disinherited also. First, we have to remind ourselves that Jesus was born a Jew. And oftentimes the Christian church overlooks the fact of Jesus's origin. He was born and raised in Nazareth, a Palestine, who was going about his father's business in a world where Judaism was a culture, a civilization, a religion. He lived in a culture that was isolated, autonomous, cultural, religious, and political during a hostile Hellenic world. It was in this climate where Jesus began his teaching and ministry. He is one that was so conditioned and organized within himself that he became a perfect instrument for the embodiment of a set of ideas of such dramatic potency that they could change the calendar, reclaiming or rechanneling the thought of the world and placing a new sense of the rhythm of life in a weary, nerve-snapped civilization. Okay, it's the first point. He was born a Jew. Secondly, Jesus was a poor Jew. In the book of Luke, Jesus's dedication at the temple is recorded. And you can go to the book of Luke and read that. And it states that when the days of her purification was over, get the words out, Vivian. Once a woman had her days of purification were over, every male child that opened up the womb was called holy to the Lord. And a sacrifice was to be offered according to the law of the Lord's. The offering was a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now, this is recorded in the book of Luke. The regulation in Leviticus says, and when the days of her purification are fulfilled, this is what she does for a son. She brings a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for the sin offering. So there's a lamb for the burnt offering and a turtle dove or pigeon for the sin offering. However, if she was not able to bring a lamb, then she could bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for the burnt offering and one for the sin offering. And so when Mary and Joseph went to the temple for the sacrifice, they bought 2 turtle doves. So we know that the economic predicament in which he was born placed him with the great masses of men on earth. The masses of the people were poor. Dr. Thurman goes on to say that in Jesus, it would be safe to say that his poverty was more truly Son of Man than he would have been if the incident of family or birth had made him a rich son of Israel. And remember, that is exactly what the people were looking for when Jesus came, when the Messiah came. They were looking for somebody of royalty and of lots of might, not meager Jesus, they thought, even though Jesus wasn't meager, in my opinion. And let's not overlook the fact that men and women have transcend circumstances of birth and training. So we have looked at Jesus was born a Jew, he was born poor, and thirdly, Jesus was a member of a minority group amid a larger dominant and controlling group. The situation which Jesus found himself and for the people of Israel as they faced the hostility of the Greco-Roman world becomes the word and work of redemption for all the cast down people in every generation and in every age. Hallelujah. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Wherever his spirit appears, the oppressed gather fresh courage, for he announced the good news that fear, hypocrisy, and hatred, the 3 hounds of hell that track the trail of the disinherited, need have no dominion over them. All right, Jesus, bring it on. So as we realign and readjust our lives, let's not forget that Jesus conquered the hounds of hell, and we absolutely have the power within to combat insecurities, fears, and haters, be they real or imagined. Our attention should be geared towards forgiveness, love, and humility. These are the things, and these are the characteristics that Jesus embodied and lived out, even in the midst of all of the chaos and all of the hatred that he lived in. The final chapter of Dr. Thurman's book is love. Love. And in it, Jesus made clear our moral obligation to our neighbors. Every man is potentially every other man's neighbor. He defined neighbor with the parable of the Good Samaritan. You remember that parable, right? And that parable shows what happens when a man responds directly to human need across the barriers of class, race, and condition. Man must love his neighbor directly, clearly, and permit no barriers between them. So in conclusion, my friends, I would really encourage you to read that book in its entirety. It is a small book. It's only 100 pages, but it is so thought-provoking that you will not be able to read that in one setting. And if you read it in one setting, you're going to want to come back and read it again because you really want to chew on it and really digest what Dr. Thurman is sharing with us. I'm telling you, it is so applicable to today. And from it, we can glean some of the ways that we, as people of color, can deal with what's going on in this world, or those that are working with those that are marginalized or disinherited. This is just a great book. And in it, he expounds a lot more on those 3 hounds of hell. I love that term, the 3 hounds of hell: fear, hypocrisy, or deception. And he talks about how these hounds of hell affect the disinherited. And he also gives some insight as to how to deal with these hellhounds. That's how you can call them, is hellhounds. So some of the things that I personally walked away with from this book is that Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount was an affirmation, and it was faith that outlined his positive answer to the awful fact of fear and its twin sons of thunder, anxiety, and despair. And I never thought of the Sermon of the Mount in those terms, but read it for yourself. Another thing that I came away with is that you and I, are children of God. And it's not that I did not already know that. It just made me even more assured and positive. The God of life that sustains all of nature and all the intricacies of life processes itself is the God that sustains me and you. Another thing I came away with is that, and looking at Jesus and his work and his life as disinherited and living the life that I have lived and that many of us and many others continue to live, that no matter how difficult life might be, God will take care of you. And reading Dr. Thurman's book, he talks about his grandmother who had a great influence in his life. And his grandmother was a slave, and but a woman of solid faith, solid and strong faith, and always reminded him that he was a child of God. And when you think of yourself as a child of God, that verse that says, if God is for me, who can be against me, becomes really real and vivid. You know, Jesus rejected hatred because he saw that hatred meant death to the mind, death to the spirit, and death to communion with the Father. Wow. He affirmed life, and hate was the great denial. All right, y'all. I'll leave you with this from Dr. Thurman's book. There is a spirit at work in life and in the hearts of men which is committed to overcoming the world. It is universal, knowing no age, no race, no culture, and no condition of men, for both the privileged and the underprivileged, if the individual puts at the disposal of the Spirit the needful dedication and discipline, he can live effectively in the chaos of the present, the high destiny of a son of God. So, my friends, I hope that you have been able to draw some nuggets out of this episode that you can use in your life, and that you would be spurred on to go out and purchase Jesus and the Disinherited by Dr. Howard Thurman, and just reflect on the state and the nature of our humanness, and what are we doing? How are we treating others? How are we treating ourselves? How are we escaping those hounds of hell? So if you enjoy this episode, please make sure that you share it, and don't forget that I need your ratings and your comments, and you can do that either on Spotify or Apple. So until the next time, I bid you peace. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The best gift that you could give me is to share this podcast with family and friends. And don't forget to review it. That way, this podcast will grow organically. If you need to reach out to me, please check out my Facebook page, DM me there, or you can email me at godskow@gmail.com. We have upcoming Bible studies that we would love for you to join us in, or if there is a guest or someone that you would like to see me interview on this podcast, please let me know. We are here to work together to realign our lives. Until the next episode, take care, and I look forward to sharing more and more with you as we realign our lives. Peace until next week.